Doing good?
I mean, there's a Terminator 2 Judgment Day skull behind me, so that's awesome.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with pinball. I've talked many times about how much I love it. But let's jump into why I get to talk to you guys today. It has to have been an interesting a week or two for you guys with everything that happened. Because I just want to start with, when you guys were making this, was the hope you reached like 1 million people? Was it the hope you reached 5 million? Like, what was that view counter that you were hoping for in that initial few days?
We didn't really, it was just to make something cool. It wasn't like, oh my god, we have to hit so many views in order to be successful. Like, we didn't measure it like that. We just,
It was just a lark,
Yeah.
I mean, personally, what I thought was that it might get pulled down and then it would just be something I'd just show with friends.
Okay. I want to jump backwards to when you guys first met. That first meeting that said, what was the genesis of this?
Like when we first met?
No, for this project specifically. Like, who made the first phone call? I have this idea.
I was actually just having a talk with Adi, and I was telling him an idea that I had for like this short film I was going to do, a science fiction film. And then he said, like, if you're going to do that, I've got a better idea. I got this idea for Power Rangers, and he wanted to do this like dark version of it. And I don't know shit about Power Rangers, so you can take it from there.
Yeah, and I sent Joseph the script, and he completely rewrote it and made it like epic. And I was like,
that was good timing.
we just got shot at.
Yeah.
By some angry plushies. What?
Okay, so basically, and how long ago was this? This was when?
I mean, this was like, actually it was about 8 months ago. Actually, no, you know what? It was almost a year ago.
Yeah, it was this time last year.
It was, yeah,
it was
a year
this
ago.
time last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he sent me the script. I mean, we actually had a night where we were just talking filmmaking, just hardcore filmmaking.
It was actually like the best film school experience. Actually, Joseph came over to my house, and you've been over to my house, right? And he sat there, and this is back when I had like all my boys just wandering around, and they were coming in and out the door while Joseph was giving me a shot-by-shot breakdown of detention and how he made everything. And I was like, and as he was explaining it, I was like, okay, two thoughts went through my head. One, this guy really, really, really knows what he's doing, more so than anyone I've ever met in this town. And two, he should be doing something action-oriented.
Yeah, so he sent me the script of Power Rangers, and honestly, like when he was talking about like we should bootleg something and bootleg something dark, I thought like he's gonna pitch me like a Daredevil or some property, something that was already dark, and he said Power Rangers, and I was like what? And it was actually on the surface of it, it was so stupid that was cool, So I read the script, and the script had like a bunch of different things in it that I eventually brought into the actual thing, but it was actually structured very different. The actual villain in it was Lord Zed.
Yeah.
It was like a psychologist like talking to one of the Power Rangers, who actually I think it was Zach at the time.
Yeah, it was Zach. He'd been suicidal, so his arms were like bandaged up, and he was just dealing with the PTSD and talking to the shrink. And the shrink was like, "Do you still talk to your old friends?" And you go back and actually remember the Green Ranger was the dude in North Korea.
Yeah.
And then it ended with like, basically, Zach was like, gave this monologue to the shrink, basically saying like, "Let me guess, you're gonna tell me to come talk to you a few more times, put me on some meds." And then the psychologist was like, "No, actually, I think you've gone through too much, and you should just end it." He's like, "What?" He's like, "No, yeah, and here's a bottle of poison. You should just drink it and end it." He's like, "This is a fucking joke." And he's like, dramatic, yeah.
Sound effects.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
And then the shrink stands up and he's like, "You know what? Let me help you with that." And he turns into Lord Zed, and then it cuts to him walking out, looking into the camera, and you see like his staff like stabbed through Zach's heart, and he looks in the camera. He's like, "Did you think I'd stay down forever?"
Well, you know what the thing? It was written for low budget, so
Super low budget.
Super low budget. It was the scale was really small. It was more of a psychological thing, and then I took it and then just I just wrote the fantasy version of it.
I mean, he turned it into like the most badass thing ever.
I'm very curious. The thing that I find really cool about this is that nobody had any idea this was going on until it premiered, or until the night before where you guys did some sort of screening. So my thing is that how hard was it to keep it under wraps? Did you know what I mean? Because nobody knew.
Well, I told everybody I was doing a tampon commercial, And the reality is, I did like a water filter commercial like probably 2 months before, so no one was questioning it. And it's like I do a lot of commercials, so it's really easy to hide when no one's paying attention. Everybody believes that you're just doing like product and stuff like that. I was making jokes about it on Twitter for literally for a year. And actually, what ended up happening is I think people got really disappointed because they were really looking forward to this amazing tampon commercial. And I would take like little pictures that I was doing on set, like some blood splatters, and say tampon. And so I think in people's heads there's this amazing tampon commercial floating out, and I just disappointed them. It was Power Rangers instead.
Well, the thing is that you guys this wasn't like you just did this with no-name actors. You got people. You have actors that people recognize. So my question is, were there pictures leaking from the set and no one really put it together? Do you know?
No, not really.
There was a moment where someone had gotten hold of the costumes, like after we're done with them.
Oh yeah, it was a disaster.
And they tried to sell it, and I don't know who that was. There are a bunch of dickheads floating around right now, and if Saban ever catches those people, Saban should sue those people as soon as possible.
Totally.
Completely. Just take them, throw them
To
in
the
jail.
cleaners.
Absolutely.
We'll help you.
Yeah, we will. And so people were they heard rumors that maybe we're doing a TV pilot or something Saban was doing, but no, but I think it was really, really minor, and for the most part, no one had any clue whatsoever.
Talk a little bit about the post-production on this, because one of the things that really impresses me about this thing is the look of it. It looks like it has scope and scale with effects, and it looks fucking badass. Exactly. So talk a little bit about bringing that to this and the challenges of doing this, independently.
Well, I mean, my personal feeling is like a lot of fan films, people have an expectation going to fan films that they're crap, basically, because a lot of them are the general idea of most fan films, it's a form of creative reproduction. People just want to sort of make something that looks like what they've seen before and do their own spin on it, but essentially it's the same thing, So the intent on this one, and oh, by the way, and when that happens, I think the audience goes, it's a labor of love, but it's never going to be as good as what the original thing is. So we are going to lower expectations and accept things at a lower level and applaud for easier things. And the agenda here was to flip that idea completely. Like from frame one, blow you away and go, okay, not only is this based on the property but it's actually shot at a higher level. That was a joke for me. It's like to release an actual thing that looked better than the actual thing it was based on. That was the funny thing for me.
I'm curious about, obviously when you're doing something like this, how much was the final cut? How close was that to what you guys had storyboarded and put together? Was there like an extra minute that you cut out, or this is exactly...
He literally, any producer that's watching this, they're already lining up to work with this dude, but he literally shoots and edits in his head. It's crazy. I've never seen that before.
So the answer is there's no scrap footage. There's
it's insane. It's insane.
Right. So how much was everything storyboarded, and how much were you figuring out things in the moment? For example, some of the fight sequences, or did you storyboard everything, or? Yeah,
everything was completely drawn out. Every single frame, every single panel. But I don't stick to the storyboards. I think it's a mistake that a lot of directors do. They're trying to shoot what's on the board. And I'm more reactive. I have my plan all mapped out. It's like a basketball game. You have your plan, or a football game, or whatever, and you've got it all mapped out. And you think that the other side's going to do this, and the other side in this particular case is your idea versus the reality of the set, the actors, the costuming, the walls, the lighting, the time, the complexity of moving things around. Things get adjusted, And for instance, as you watch the performance, you can't make the performance just stick to your storyboard. Sometimes, it looks better if James Van Der Beek steps up and walks to a wall. It looks better if he sits down a certain way. It looks better if he takes a beat and puts his hand up. And actors have things that they want to bring to the table. So I think the perfect blending is to have a director that has everything mapped out, but then also is reactive to the actors, so that you have a spark of life as opposed to just trying to do a moving animatic. And that's not what I do. It's the filmmaking. I draw it out, but it's still being made on set.
I'm very curious, when did you get an inkling, or when did you guys, I want to talk about the video getting pulled off Vimeo and YouTube. When did you first realize, wait a minute, there might be an issue here, Saban, you know what I mean? What was going on? Describe a little bit behind the scenes.
I think we're not supposed to talk about that. Yeah, we're not supposed to talk about that.
Okay. Well, I'll move on and skip that complete section.
There was no problem. It was a parody, and there was no infringement whatsoever.
We love Saban. They're
We
awesome.
love Saban. They're such like Chaim's such a nice guy. Remember when he called us and he complimented my complexion and
Saban loves the way he looks.
yeah,
It's awesome.
He was like, dude, you look just like a cross between Zartan and fucking Winter Soldier, and it's awesome.
I will note sarcasm and or we'll move past all that.
Or it's a fact, and he's like the coolest dude ever.
I think he is. I think it's pretty cool. I mean,
Yeah.
look, it's out, right?
Yeah.
That's all. That's very true.
Did you know that he wrote Go Go Power Rangers and he like sang it too?
I did not know that.
That was him, and he played the guitar.
Really?
No.
No.
That you had me there. Congratulations.
You had me at hello.
Exactly. I am curious though about the difficulty in making something like this independently, and what for both of you was the big challenge you did not think you were going to overcome, if anything.
Wow, challenge.
Was there something that, like, do you know what I mean? Or
I mean, when I rewrote the script and started it, like I think in the beginning it started in like a doctor's office or whatever, so it was like very small. And so when I rewrote it, I was like fade in, exterior desert, giant robot. You know, like I just went out guns blazing from the top. So if you talk about
And then he sent me the script, and I'm like, okay, hey dude, so the first page, there's like a robot getting nuked, like, and he's like, yeah, I'm like, okay, just making sure.
and then and then also like there is an aspect to it that it's a low budget feature, like it's low budget short. But like I've never been proud of doing anything cheap, As far as I'm concerned, that's all money stuff. Like the money stuff, and Adi's a producer too, but I don't think you really. It's if you think about it, like people don't really care what things cost,
No, only like douchey studio. I should not say that, but it's like this whole idea that. I mean, not 10 years, like 3 years ago, a movie's P&A spend, right, the marketing spend,
Sure.
was pegged to the budget. So they'd spend 70% of the movie's budget on billboards and TV spots. And it wasn't until recently, it wasn't really until like, Jason Blum took over the horror space, where they were like, oh, we can make the movie for like $2 million and then spend 40 marketing it.
Well, look, here's the thing. It's a short film, and how many short films make money? None of them, practically, right? So I'm going into it knowing that I'm never going to get a return on it. So I might as well just do what I want to do, right? And ultimately, I knew it was going to take X amount of time, at least 6-7 days, and and ultimately, like when I'm going to have to ask favors from crew. But what am I really trying to achieve here? Am I really trying to achieve the cheapest thing possible so that everybody goes, oh, Joseph is great, he can do things for cheap? That's not what I want. I don't want the audience to walk away going, oh, he's a cheap filmmaker. I just want them to go, like, that's a great piece of work. Like, I really enjoy it. In fact, I don't even want you to care about, like, how much it costs or anything like that. What you should be caring about is, did you enjoy it? Did you like it, So in the process of getting to that point where you're just genuinely being entertained, I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want, like, a bunch of people working for free, because at the end of the day, like, I'm spending money, but the crew that's coming on, they're kind of spending money too by donating their time, And these people have families. A grip has no reason to necessarily care whether or not I get like this great genius piece of work. They got to feed their family. They got kids. They got stuff like that. So I made sure that it was made with a certain number in mind, but people were not getting hurt. People still got paid low budget feature film rates, which is still way lower than what I would pay on like a commercial or something like that. So ultimately, the difficulty was, I knew that I wanted to make it, but I didn't want to make it so cheap that people got screwed all over the place.
And my question is, did you use a lot of the crew that you typically use in your commercials and other things, or was it a lot of new people?
It was a combination. I would say the vast majority were people that I work with on music videos and commercials, and then like a couple new people, like PAs and things like that, and a couple of grip and lighting department people and stuff like that. But I would say like 80% are people that came back and they would just do me favors, for a lower rate. When they could, when they're not on a job and they had the day off, they would come over on my set and help out.
Well, I think not to bring Michael Bay in this conversation, but Michael Bay brought in his crew for Pain and Gain, and they shot that low budget for Michael Bay standards, but it was his entire crew, and I think they all did it because it's like, okay, we're going to do this for Michael, and then we're going to do Transformers next, or we're going to do a commercial next, or so it's like, you know what I mean, like everyone's doing a favor.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that it was done for cheap, and anyone that's a professional would look at this and go, oh, this is really, really cheap, you know? But it's not as cheap as you think it is because I was trying to be at least somewhat fair. It's still not fair, ultimately. I always feel guilty when I ask people to work below their rates, but I had to, so that's the most difficult part for me. It's like when I have to go ask for those favors for people that that they're going to be sacrificing their time and walking away from jobs that they could get paid a lot more possibly.
Sure.
And I'm always thankful. You know, that was the greatest thing for me. It's that I was hoping that. And the other thing that you're always worried about is if you make them do something like this, the worst thing a crew member can ever do is donate their time and the product comes out like a piece of shit. So like I was just, you know, people seem to like it. So that is a relief for me that people that worked on it like can walk away going, yeah, I was part of something great.
I don't know if you guys can talk about this, but I'm going to see if you can. One of the things I think about this short particular is that it pushes up the boundary, it pushes at what is fair use versus, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm being completely honest about this. Like, I really dig this, and you're giving it away, and you made essentially a fan film because you're giving it for free. But what I'm basically saying is, talk a little bit about where is that line in your brain about what's fair use. Have you had a lot of conversations about this with other people? Have you been paying attention to what people are saying online in terms of, because there's a big debate over this film particularly, over, you know, where is that line of what you're allowed to do?
Totally. And you know, at the end of the day, what's the point of art? Like, why does it exist, right? It's not necessarily just to entertain. That's an externality from it. That's hopefully a byproduct. Art exists to create a conversation. This definitely sparked a conversation. So kind of where I sit on that argument, I think it's kind of obvious, but the conversation is being had, and you know that's.
You know, it's funny, like working in this sort of public pop iconography that I do with my music videos and commercials. I mean, I look at it from a different point of view. This was not a fan film for me. I mean, it's a fan film for other people, and people that enjoy Power Rangers come back and they look at it, whatever. I was never a fan of Power Rangers, so going into it, it's not a fan film from my perspective.
Yeah, I don't mean to chalk up, but you know what I'm saying when I.
No, I get it, but it's categorized as a fan film because it's a film made by people that are not profiting off it, that are using a pre-existing IP and playing around with it for no profit.
That's what I should have said.
Right.
That's what I meant.
I understand the concept of a fan film. My intent, as opposed to most fan films, is very different. Like as a non-fan of the material, you know, I was going in there to play and explore what you can do with an IP like that. You know, I was literally twisting and fucking around with it so that I could actually make an interesting statement. Like, you know, for one thing, for instance, everybody is doing the dark reboot stuff. Adi loves it. I like it too. You know, I love the Chris Nolan films. You know. The issue is, you know, for me, they never go far enough, and that's the funny thing. Like, you know, like the dark, gritty version of Batman is PG-13. So what do you really see? It's Batman doing an elbow punch or something. You know,
right.
You know, it's like it's barely difficult. It's like people might pow, right?
Right.
And then, but when they shoot that gun, it's like there's no blood, and it's a puff of smoke. So. For me, the funny experiment of it was to, what if you really did a dark and gritty thing, but really did it? Like in a way, everyone keeps pussing around with what dark and gritty means, but everything I've ever seen that's dark and gritty is really not that dark and gritty. I mean, the last thing that was really dark and gritty was like Addie's dirty laundry thing, you know? Like that was dark and gritty.
Breaking
for real, you know?
Yeah.
So now, if we're gonna take a silly populate Power Rangers and do the dark and gritty version, I wanted to push it so much that people like pull back and go, wait a minute, this is too much. And, you know? But, you know, the reality is, a lot of people actually didn't think it was too much. A lot of people were like,
no, yeah, they're like, oh man, they could have gone further.
I should have done more.
Well, this goes into my next question. Obviously, when you put your heart and soul into something and you make something like this, how much are you reading every comment and what people are saying? How much do you take it to heart? How much are you looking at some of the criticism and saying, wow, that person was right? And how much, do you know what I mean? Or like saying, wow, these people totally didn't get it. I guess, how much are you reading comments?
I mean, do you want the truth or?
No, no, I mean, I think it's pointless to discuss. Like, well, you can do the whichever version you want, but I think honesty is always better.
Yeah, I mean, I read comments.
Yeah,
I read comments.
yeah, I read.
They're funny. They're people who just completely miss the point of.
Look,
You know.
we made it to get a reaction, so it's not like theater where you just like do your performance, get on stage, and they either boo you or they clap.
Right.
So your boos and claps are comments, right?
Totally.
Yeah. So like right now, there's like 20,000 comments on YouTube. I mean, you're not reading every one of those.
No.
Are you?
No. Got it.
But in the first 24 hours, you're checking things out, right? Like,
Yeah, just and then there was kind of a narrative that was being built by, the media, and then it got weird because then Huffington Post and CNN were getting involved, and I'm like, okay, this just got taken to another level.
The things that are really interesting to me are like when the Huffington Post and the CNN, the Time magazines come in.
Yeah,
Those are like really fun to read. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Like CNN's analysis of this was hilarious.
But that's what I mean. Like the thing I think that's fascinating about Power Rangers is how much it was a conversation piece with a lot of people. Because again, this is what I was talking about. What I butchered the question, but taking an IP and doing what you want with it, And I think that that's what I think a lot of people are talking about.
Well, totally. I mean, not to toot my own horn here, but in January I had a movie come out that was 5.5 hours long, and it's considered the greatest Bollywood Indian movie ever. In February I had a movie come out starring Ryan Reynolds, and then this short, and the reaction for the first two, for the actual movies that were in theaters pales in comparison to this. So there's also a conversation about the role of the internet in disseminating pop culture.
100%.
And it feels like a lot of times when because I do a lot of big pop work, so it's like a lot of my pop work tends to be predicting what the audience is going to do and how they're going to react, and sort of doing it. Like for instance, the previous thing I did before this was Taylor Swift's Blank Space, and I knew that I had this thing where I had her like just beat the crap out of a car and beat the crap out of a guy and just go completely nuts, and she had delivered this crazy performance, and I sat on it for like 3 months. It was already done. And I was just waiting to see what the anticipation, because I saw her other video that came out for the Shake It Off, and it was like kind of like still within her wheelhouse.
I love that song, by the way.
Shake It Off.
Yeah, or In Trouble.
Yeah.
I love that song. I like go on Spotify and you guys know that like Savage Garden and Hanson are like some of my favorite.
Oh really?
Yeah. And like I listened to Backstreet's Back. I love that song.
Yeah, I made up his childhood.
No, you did that video where like AJ's in the robot suit and he's like, he's all like glittery and glossy and his like hair's perfect, but he's like, I was like, dude, that's awesome.
Dude, the guys that did that worked on this.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Yeah, so this Power Rangers thing is done by some of the visual effects people that did some of the stuff in Backstreet Boys. So full circle, man.
Backstreet's back.
Yeah,
in my mind.
All right.
Anyways.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious. You guys seem like you worked very well together on this, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask what I think a lot of people are wondering. Are you thinking about doing something else together, whether it be maybe a feature film, whether it be another short? Are you guys having that conversation?
Oh yeah, we're talking constantly. I mean, like this guy, like I've met so many people in town over the course of, and obviously I've been in movies and studios and things like that. I mean, I trust him more than anyone else I've ever met. Like this guy is fearless, like fearless.
Wow, thanks, man.
No, and also a little insane, which I love, because people think I'm insane. Wait till they get a hold of Adi.
I just keep trying to talk him in very casually into doing Dread 2.
Yes. We've had this conversation off camera, on camera, about
Right.
the need for that film.
I'm like, hey, Joseph, remember Judge Dredd? And he's like, what?
Well, I
We
am.
had a barbecue. I'll be like, hey, look at this hamburger. Doesn't it look like Judge Dredd?
Yeah, the Judge Dredd thing comes up pretty much on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I'll just throw it out there. Is that something that you guys would consider doing the way you did this? Or is that a little bit more of a gray area? Because you produced Dread. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how it all works.
Well, I bootlegged it already in a cartoon, which got me kicked off. And then they were like, wait, the cartoon was really cool. You're back on. I'm like, oh.
Well, so have you had that conversation? Or
I mean, we've discussed some things. The problem with me, as Adi knows, and probably quite a few people out there, as fast as I am as a filmmaker, like I shot Power Rangers in like 6 days. It actually takes me like 5 years to actually do anything, like long form thing. Like I make a movie once every 5 years at this point. Like if that actually, I think it was like 6 years between Torque and Detention. And it was like actually I shot Detention in 2010. I shot this in 2000, and so it's like
I
5 years.
I think there's so many. We're in an interesting time in kind of cinematic history, right? Because movies are becoming less relevant every day. They're being supplanted by other media options that young people are consuming.
Yes, I will agree
Right.
that there's a lot of distraction.
Totally, right? So like, I think when both of us were growing up, they were kind of the pinnacle of entertainment, of art.
Yep.
And now they're kind of losing that place, evidenced by the fact that movie stars aren't as relevant as they used to be, right? So I think kind of on the bigger studio side, right? Without naming any names, or maybe we should name some names, but I think there's an opportunity to go in there and actually rethink how some of these franchises have been done.
Can I also say something about one of the reasons it's hard for me to get into the studio world on a certain level? It's not just a matter of them distrusting me. It's like I kind of distrust them, and not in a negative I hate studios world, but the sort of trap that they're in. And this is one of the reasons we did Power Rangers. And that if you really look at movies, because there's such a need for a PG-13 4-quadrant movie, where you've got to try to get some, because they're expensive. Like you could make a movie for like $15 million, but it's still going to cost like $20-30 million to market it. You know, you can make a movie for $5 million, and I've learned this from Detention. Like you can make for as little money as possible, but if you get it out to theaters, it just costs a certain amount of money to. How do you get people to know about it? So like one of the things that I've seen happen in movies is the R-rated film really isn't made that much anymore, you know? And who really wants to watch R-rated movies on something like 15, 16, 17-year-old boys, you know? And so they, like Expendables 3, they toned it down to PG-13, which really was an R-rated franchise. And what ends up happening is I think that people, like the young kids, are still seeing the R-rated movies. They're just not doing it in theaters. And if they go to theaters, there's an expectation now that it's got to be watered down, and it's just basically a thrill ride. You're just going to put on your 3D glasses and just get like a roller coaster ride for some sort of aesthetic thing. But in terms of like serious work, you're going to watch it on HBO. You're going to watch it like on the internet or a short film. If you want to see some nudity, so your friends are literally putting it on Vimeo or something like that. And if you actually want to see like a grown-up superhero movie that's like hardcore, it's going to be done for free, you know, by us and just thrown out there. So it's hard to actually, you know.
And then also, you know, this just gets into the nature of marketing. But you know, you get inundated with teasers for the teaser for the teaser for the trailer, photos, billboards, and then you end up in a place where you've basically seen the movie before it's out. So there's no surprises. So your expectations are way too high, and you leave and you're like, oh, I already, you know, there was nothing new and fresh about that. Maybe there was. But it was new and fresh, and then you released the trailer, and you know
that was one of the experiments we wanted to do with Power Rangers.
Totally.
We don't want anyone to know anything. Just get dropped in. And you're supposed to watch it cold.
Totally. Like, I mean, imagine if there had been like a teaser, and then a trailer for Power Rangers, and then all of a sudden, you know, the surprise would have been gone, right?
Yeah.
Like people would have been like, oh, yeah, that's all right.
I'm very curious about. I'm waiting for the day that someone is going to take Kickstarter and make a very cool indie feature film that fans have been waiting for. For example, a Dread sequel. For example, anything.
Wow, you have to drop that on me.
Right.
On camera. I knew that's where he was going with it.
No, once I bring up Kickstarter, but no, being serious, like, is it something like you guys obviously just did something, in my opinion, very cool. And so is there any thought about doing something else and saying, this is what we did before, we want to raise this money to do this, and, you know, here's our track record. So you...
Okay, I know you probably have your views. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to go my views, okay? If you got a bunch of money laying around, you know, 10, 20 bucks and stuff like that, and you're going to donate it to something, I personally don't think you should donate to rich people. Okay, like I just don't think so. I know there's like a couple like rich dudes out there, and they're like, you know, donate my Kickstarter, and they get $3 million to make a fucking movie, and you know they got like $30 million in the bank. You know, it's like Detention cost a lot of money, and I spent all my own money on it, and it was not cheap for me. But at the same time, I could afford it. You know, I just have this sort of like almost moral feeling that if you've got money laying around, give it to people that really deserve it, you know? People that cannot have any other option but to raise it through Kickstarter. That's what I think Kickstarter is for. It's for people that cannot have access to these funds, do not know rich people, cannot go to their friends and get any money and stuff like that. If you're a rich person, I think you're hacking the system and you're gaming it and you're taking money from people that Kickstarter is for. That's my personal opinion.
I completely disagree. I mean, I couldn't disagree more. I live in a house, and I have a tennis court, and I can only play singles at the singles court, right?
Uh-huh.
And then I have, my friends come over, and we want to play doubles, and we can't play doubles. You know what I'm saying? And it's affecting my quality of life. Like if I don't think it's unreasonable for me to go on Kickstarter to build Adi a new tennis court. Like, that's perfectly reasonable, because honestly, it's going to affect the way I view myself in a positive way. Then I'm going to go home and I'm going to come up with an idea, and the idea will be a byproduct of this new tennis court.
I think you've made a compelling argument, actually.
Totally, yeah.
I changed my mind. Give your money to rich people.
Totally. Especially when it has nothing to do with the actual thing that they're trying to make, right? Like with the tennis court, it's super helpful.
I mean, you could give your money to things like cancer, You could give
Why
it to,
would you do that?
I mean, you could give to Zach Braff. I mean, Zach Braff.
No. Why would you give your money to cancer, dude? Like, if someone has cancer, they're already going to die.
Oh,
so if you're
true.
giving the money to cancer, you're helping someone from the future. Like, this isn't Terminator.
Oh,
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
sure, okay, all right. You know what? That's why Adi's an amazing producer. He has just convinced me not to give money to cancer or poor people or anything like that. Just give it to
Zach Braff.
Zach Braff. There we go.
Zach Braff.
Adi, you have a little bit of a track record with making bootlegs, and I'm very curious if the track record will continue, if you will, if there's more bootlegs being planned.
I think track record is a nice word. What is the word for repeat felons when they send them to jail? They're like, hey, you're going to get an even greater sentence because you robbed a bank last week, and now you robbed another bank.
Repeat felon?
More like a history of repeated felony. That's what you're trying to say, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it like that. I'm going to say, sure, I'll say it like that.
So you're wondering if I'm going to keep breaking the law?
Sure.
I don't believe there is a law.
If we're being serious for a second.
Right.
Are you currently making other things that people on the internet might be enjoying at some point in the future?
Yes.
Would you like to share more than that?
No, but I have an idea for a Captain Planet one.
That's what I was going to ask. That was my follow-up question.
Right.
Is that something you're currently working on, or you're writing it as we speak?
No, it's just like an idea in my that was the other, because I used to I grew up in China, right? You know this, like Hong Kong, and we didn't really have access to American products, and then when they would come in, they'd be super delayed. So I would just go to school and lie to the kids and tell them, hey man, I saw this Captain Planet episode, but he dies and Captain Pollution takes over and the world's super fucked up, and I would create these stories, and one of them was basically, and I was just thinking about this the other day, the planet, they would be labeled, the Planeteers in Captain Planet, they would be labeled eco-terrorists today. They fucking lost. The whole point of that TV show is, to save the environment and whatnot. We are living today in the post-apocalyptic version of Captain Planet and the fucking Planeteers, right? Captain Planet, who draws his power from the Earth, he'd be fucking weak. The Earth is dying, man. Captain Planet's dying. And then Wheeler, he'd be old now. He'd be pissed off, and he has has the ring. Where he's fire, but why is he only shooting fire at the ground? To melt the cement. He'd be burning motherfuckers. He'd be yo, what up? He'd be like John Wick, but with a fire ring.
Dude, you did it right to the center.
I know, it was awesome.
So you're trying to say that Captain Planet is something that speaks to you?
I love Captain Planet. Captain Planet's an awesome. It has a good message too. It's.
I don't know, man. If I were a superhero and I walked around and called myself Captain Planet, you're a douchebag.
I like G.I. Joe.
Yeah, G.I. Joe's dope.
I'm waiting for when G.I. Joe and Transformers are going to meet in a feature film. I'm figuring that's only a matter of time for Paramount.
What the fuck? Did you just read our mind?
What?
Okay. Can we talk about G.I. Joe?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. What is Cobra Commander? What is Cobra as an organization?
Are we being serious, or?
Dead serious. They are ISIS. They are ISIS. They are literally ISIS. They are people that come together in a network and just fuck shit up for the sake of fucking shit up, right? And the U.S. government does not have a response for this, right? And yet all our movie villains, especially in the tentpole genre, are a bunch of fucking pussies.
They're what movie villains do are nothing compared to what happens in real life.
Right. I'm not scared of movie villains. I would hang out with movie villains. The real villains in the world, they're the ones that freak me out.
Like the equivalent of movie villains now, it's like what we used to think of like villains back in the 60s in those James Bond things, you know,
Yeah.
like laser sharks or something.
Yeah,
You know, it's like,
they're usually like CGI monsters.
yeah, it's just like villains today are like super tame compared to what villains really do in the real world today.
So imagine like G.I. Joe done like American Sniper, where it's like real, it's fucking gritty, and it's not. These are the most badass dudes who are coming together in order to. These are the most badass dudes who are coming together in order to stop a real problem that the government cannot deal with.
And you also have to think about it, like we already know that the version of G.I. Joe that was elevated before, basically G.I. Joe was basically Delta Force before there was Delta Force. That was in the 60s or whatever, you know, it's like in the 80s, it was like just kind of like the sort of hyperbolized version of Delta Force. Well, now just imagine like everybody knows what Delta Force and SEAL Team is, so what is G.I. Joe? They're supposed to be the level beyond that. You know,
Yeah.
like you know those things where like you see what it takes to become a Delta Force and all those like things. Imagine now it's like you take all the best Delta Force guys, they now get weeded out to become a GI Joe.
Right, and it's like a real training sequences where it's not CGI. These are real human. These are real people. Like kind of like you think the opening montage from Lone Survivor, where you're like, oh my god, these are real people and they've gone through hell in order to do this, but they're doing it for this cause.
So you're trying to say that you guys are working on something?
No, we're just,
No.
We're just
We're just like, yo.
The problem I think is, I agree with what you're saying about movie villains. The fact is that you can only go so far, you know, because otherwise it can't be a Hollywood studio thing. It would have to be super indie.
It's true. I mean, I don't necessarily think that you have to show gore and violence and things like that, but the intensity of movies, they're just down now, you know? Like, I feel like when you watch Game of Thrones, there's some intense sequences there.
Those bad guys are scary.
Like, you never walk into a movie these days and you're really truly afraid of the bad guys. The bad guys are just pussies. They are. They're just like weak-ass fucking things that like people like write super soft, and I don't know why they're so soft.
But do you think it's also because movies are... There's an element of escapism that people go to the movies because they want to forget about life for 2 hours, and if you go too hardcore, it's too much like real life, and maybe...
I don't think it's a matter of whether it's hardcore or not. It's a matter of like, is the story being told, and are you getting the full experience? Are you really truly believing in the story, or are you just like watching it like to me, I think that when you go into movies these days, you almost watch them like you do fan films. You're like, it's a Hollywood studio movie, they're not really going to push my buttons that much, and I'm going to watch it from like, I'm just going to waste 2 hours, and I'm not going to expect that much. I almost think that the ability to watch fan films is the same thing that happens with the audience now when they lower their expectations.
So what was the last movie then in theaters that you saw that you were like, fuck? And this goes for both of you. Was there one? Or was there one movie that you've seen recently that you're like, wow?
Well, I was gonna reference American Sniper, right? That wasn't a movie that was trying to shock you for the sake of shocking you, but it really went for it. It wasn't like holding back, and obviously people really responded to that movie, right? And
I mean, I personally don't see a difference between like in an ideal world, how you would make an independent movie, like a Scorsese flick, in terms of how intense a movie like that would be, and a legitimate popcorn movie. I think they should both work from the same core storytelling ideals and truth. You know, like you have to really believe in what you're doing. You know, like I don't think that you should like delineate between I'm gonna feel real on here and sort of not feel real when I do the thing. I mean, like I think you go back. Let me put it this way: Empire Strikes Back. Like for its time when you were a kid and you're watching it, Luke Skywalker's hand gets cut off, and that. Imagine like watching that in like 81. That is a shocking, crazy, mind-blowing. It scarred me forever. Like that literally like made me distrust George Lucas for the rest of my life. You know? And it's a great distrust because now all of a sudden he had the goodwill of saying, I can do anything I want to you. Pay attention.
right.
It also explained, for me, Goodfellas is one of my all-time favorite, if not my favorite movie. And there's an element of Joe Pesci's performance, which you're sitting in that theater and you're literally scared.
I don't think there should be any difference between the way that you watch Goodfellas and the way you watch G.I. Joe.
100, 300 million%. Agreed. I mean, I think that's the root of it. You're sitting down not necessarily just to be entertained. I think that's an externality.
I hear what you're saying, but I also think that, you know, the fact is Goodfellas is aimed at, being honest, adults, and G.I. Joe is aimed at kids. And so there is, in my opinion, an element of, you know, you can... Does that make any sense?
It makes perfect sense, but kids are growing up so much faster today, right?
Sure, but I think that if you make... there should be two movies. There's G.I. Joe for adults, and there's G.I. Joe for, like, you can't show an 8-year-old.
Let me put it this way. Raiders of the Lost Ark, if it was played today, would get an R rating. Believe it or not. You know why? Because when he shoots a gun, blood splurts out from people's bodies. And, like, the bar fight, there's blood everywhere. There's a shot where Indiana Jones is chasing a truck where he thinks Marion's on it. He takes the gun, he aims at camera, he blows, he cuts to the guy's face, and his head blows into the lens. That's a PG-13, no, that was a PG movie back in the day. The movies were more intense back then. Now, because we have PG-13 and we have the ability to, paint out the blood and alter and digitally do things, I actually think we're infantilizing kids compared to what used to be there. Like, actually, I think the violence is less intense. And I think that the expectations are getting lower and lower. I don't think that, I'm not arguing that all movies need to be R-rated. Not at all. And I'm not arguing there should be no kids' movies. I actually just think kids' movies are kind of shitty right now compared to what they were. Because we've taken so much of the realism, We've taken so much of the realism out that it's turned more cartoony and ineffective. Now, I'm not a fan of violence per se. I don't think that's the only thing that has to be in a movie. But there's so much of it out there that's ineffective. It's a weird thing going on in society right now.
And I think there's also an element of desensitization, right? If you see something violent and then there's repercussions for it, it doesn't matter to me how you're portraying the violence as long as there's repercussions versus buildings full of people blowing up and the movie carries on like, oh, it's not a big deal.
I mean, I personally think the sweet spot are like those movies of like 1982. To me, those are always some of the best genre films ever because they were made for both kids and adults. But they were right at the limits of what kids could watch. Kids would walk in, and I remember watching Raiders of the Lost Ark, and that's a scary movie. I remember the scene I must have been 10 years old, and Marion's trapped into all these skeletons are all around her, and I'm freaking out. I could barely watch that, but
because some of the skeletons were real.
And adults had the same effect too, and maybe the adults could see more of the comedy and the stuff like that, but the intensity was there all across the board. It was a shared human experience that both the kids and the parents could watch together and share together.
But that was also, that 1982 was an anomaly for movies in terms of, oh my God, what came out that year, especially that summer. I want to, because we're running out of time, I'm very curious what you both learned from making Power Rangers that could impact future films, short films, future projects, if anything.
This was again a byproduct. And obviously, I learned a tremendous amount of just knowledge both about life and about filmmaking from Joseph. And that goes without saying. But I've had these realizations about how movies are marketed. How not just movies, entertainment is marketed, right? It's we're still living in that 50s. Hey, we're going to inject the audience with a plethora of sounds and images, and they're going to crave this new product that we're releasing. I don't think that works anymore. And you're in the you also have a foot in the music industry in a big way. And then all of a sudden now, world-renowned musicians are dropping albums without any hype. I don't know, and I feel like music tends to be a step ahead of movies for whatever reason, and kind of has been that way for a while. And
I don't know. There's something about releasing this for free, and on a personal level, it's an interesting because my last movie, Detention, I spent a lot more on it, right? And I needed to make my money back, and I begged and pleaded for people not to steal it, because literally I put it out there in the world, and the only way for me to make another movie if I was going to do it that way is to get my money back and put it back in something else, which I've always had the intent to do, right? But it went out and people stole the shit out of it, and that's fine. But I found that at the end of the day, it was kind of a double-edged sword. On one hand, it kind of sucked that I didn't get my money back, but on the other hand, it's really cool that people saw and watched it. And to be very honest with you, as an artist, the artist part of me just loved that part of it, And so when we were making Power Rangers, I just went into it just straight up going, I don't care about the money. It's a loss. Mm-hmm. I just want to make it and make it as cool as possible and make myself happy, make everybody, and that's it. It's just going to be put out into the world, and that's it. And I'm not even thinking about it, But as a result, there's been an interesting thing where because it went out for free, it seemed like all of a sudden, way more than Detention ever did. People hopped onto it, and mm-hmm. shared it, and when it got taken down, people then went ahead and started file sharing it. And it was the weirdest case where, like, in detention, when they file shared, it felt bad. But when they file shared Power Rangers, that was like, yeah, keep going, guys.
I mean, it was trending on Facebook for 3 days.
Yeah.
Nothing trends on Facebook for more than a day.
Yeah.
It was trending for 3 days. It was insane.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what it is what it taught me is I actually just prefer people seeing the work than not seeing the work. I don't know about the financial implications of file sharing. I don't know what the business is and stuff like that. What I just really learned is it's been going on my entire life. I make things for people. I really have no financial stake in music videos you can watch on YouTube for free. I don't get any money for what you do. And Power Rangers was the same thing. And when I took the brakes off, it was just about seeing the reactions as opposed to like worrying about the financial implications. And I don't know what that means, but as an artist, I have to admit, it felt good.
Yeah, well, I mean,
more people saw this. I'm just thinking out loud here. More people saw this in its first 2 days than saw basically most of my movies combined.
Yeah, it's crazy,
Right?
right?
I mean, it's crazy. That's insane. I mean, the numbers are just staggering. I mean, it's got like what 13, 14
yeah,
million.
but that also doesn't count all the people that just said fuck it and torrented it.
Totally.
You know what I
No,
mean?
totally.
Like,
And by the way, keep torrenting
I
it.
mean, a lot of people, like some dude came up to me yesterday. He was like, "Dude, I started file sharing that because they were fucking shutting you down." So, and I'm like, "Oh," and then there's some like hacker group that was like, "We're gonna disseminate this. Fuck the man."
Yeah, it's
like
awesome.
this became like a political statement in a weird way.
well, see, the thing is, obviously, you guys are in a different position than a lot of people in terms of having the financial resources to do something like this. And I am curious if there is something else. Like, do you envision this as, for you, being, the next thing I do, I want to do something like this again? Do you know, like, what's coming up for you besides?
Well, I mean, honestly, I can't take too many shots like this because this stuff is expensive. Detention is expensive.
I mean, can I?
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
mean, literally It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. I mean, it happened on the other bootlegs too, where like, the filmmakers got the director got approached for other things, but literally like, I mean, the studios are freaking out and like offering him, they're fighting
Well,
to get him on their franchises, and
that's actually
so much so that they're calling me, and like I don't, you know what I mean? Like, you don't want to be calling a guy that looks like a pro, like.
well,
Especially if you're wearing a suit.
But that actually brings to my next question, which is that how much for the two of you, after this thing exploded, because it's hard to make something virally explode. It is. Like, there's a lot of shit out there, but this thing went crazy. How much did the phone blow up? And how much did you have meetings, which is basically, it sounds like it happened.
I mean, there's definitely, I can't lie, there's a ton of interest and a ton of meetings like across the board it's like one of those terrible stories you hear about, like, the overnight success. But although I feel like I've been doing it for so long, it's like it doesn't feel like overnight. But it looks like it. Like if you walked into my life the day before, and then you walked into my life the day after, and you didn't know me, it would be like the weirdest experience ever. But in terms of the interest, you just take it with a grain of salt, Because I've heard, I've had other filmmakers go through, friends of mine that have gone through similar things. Maybe not on this level, but like they do a hit thing, and the next thing you know, everybody wants them and stuff like that. I mean, it's a funny time. The only thing I'm looking for is for me to do something. I gotta love it, no matter what anybody says, no matter what anyone does, it's like I'll just wait it out. I don't have to freaking make movies. I mean, I can keep making commercials and music videos. So for me, it's like I want to make movies, but I'm just waiting to see if there's anything cool out there, and that's a tough thing to do. Wait for something that's cool, and I don't know. We'll see.
I interviewed someone, it's under embargo for now, so I can't say who, but someone said to me, an actor that you've all heard of, and he said that he did not work for 6 months because he couldn't find something that I have to do this, and he just chose not to work. But he's in a weird position where...
I mean, that's the thing.
Jared Leto.
Larger actor than that.
I mean, I think that's why, Adi, you don't produce that many things. I think you just produce them when you want to make them.
Totally.
Yeah. And
Not...
and I don't have to make 50 freaking movies in my life.
I mean, I love just, doing a plethora of things. I mean, I love making YouTube videos where I explain random facets of the business to people. I love vlogging. I love drawing. I love painting. I love, I don't look at it as just this is just one art form and this is all you get to do, and
I like going on Twitter and trolling people. I mean, like that's my part-time job.
I like being trolled. It's not true.
I've noticed a lot of people like trolling each other on the internet. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there and say I really dug the shit out of this short. I'm very happy you guys made it, and I really hope this is, to see more cool stuff from the two of you.
If I get to keep working with them, it'll be a dream come true. So
Hopefully it can lead to, actually that is something, it'll be interesting to see if you book something, if you guys are going to team up on something in the
I'm
future.
dying to work with them on something. And in fact, you know what? Let's just put it out there. If a studio has a big-ass franchise and they want to give it to the both of us,
we'll take that shit down.
yeah, we will fuck you up.
I'll leave it there and say, seriously, both of you, thank you so much for giving me your time. Hopefully the people could put up with the Terminator game making noise.
Are you kidding? You're the reason I wear face paint. Come on.
I would leave it there.